The topic for today is tips and tricks for getting selected in the right firm. Although obviously this webinar won't be able to get you into the right firm, the idea is to give you enough information as to when you are applying to any firm so that it helps you basically get into the firm and understand how the process works of applying to a law firm and what are the prerequisites that probably many of you don't get exposure to when you are studying in law schools based out of Mumbai. So we'll start off this webinar first by trying to collate from y'all what y'all think are the various departments and in law firms, and basically what jobs a lawyer can do once he graduates from law school. Y'all can basically raise your hands.
You can be a researcher, or you can be someone who's in charge of drafting or making a synopsis of the case files.
So a researcher. I'm sure a few of y'all have also interned in firms, so y'all have some idea as to what various departments or practices there can be.
In corporate firms, I guess due diligence and
what else?
Then litigation, going to the court and turning around basically.
Okay, so we'll add a few more. Maybe consumer law. We can add banking. We can add criminal law. In criminal, you also have the specialty of white collar crime. Okay, so these are a few options that I've just written down. So basically, I'll start with explaining the structure of the legal profession and how things are structured in terms of how firms used to operate and how firms will follow the same structural model because various different firms have different practices. But this is the general idea of what I see and others I've noticed in these firms as to how they function. Okay, so earlier there were a few law firms when the British were here, and the earlier system of law, there were only two main divisions, litigation and non-litigation in the law firms. Litigation was when you would go to court to present your case in front of a judge and argue a matter and settle a dispute. Whereas non-litigation was anything in relation to property or conveyancing, which used to be done by a different set of lawyers. Generally, these two departments were separate because they were specializations. The current structure of law firms revolves around three main arms. One is dispute resolution, which I spoke of earlier as litigation. But why dispute resolution is separate now is because it also includes which are options of dispute resolution. You don't always have to go to a court to settle your dispute. And the non-litigation arm has been split into conveyance and transaction. Conveyance includes anything to do with real estate, making of power of attorneys, etc. Whereas transaction has to do with any business transaction. So things like private equity would come under transaction. What is the basic structure of a law firm? So generally, you start off as an intern. You then move on to being a paralegal. And once you gain employment with the firm, you are introduced as an associate. Then within 2 to 3 years in a small firm, whereas maybe 4 to 5 years in a large firm, you become a senior associate. And in another 4 to 5 years, principal associate, or some firms like to call them a counsel. You then move on to associate partner and an equity partner. Would someone from the audience like to tell me what is the difference between an associate partner and an equity partner?
So equity partner is when you are amongst the small group of people who are having sort of kind of limited liability partnership in the firm.
Okay.
And whereas associate partner, you are more like an employee and you have a fixed salary. But when you become an equity partner, you have a stake in the profits of the company.
Right. So that is right. An equity partner owns a share in the firm. So when he goes home, he will take a certain percentage of the profit home based on his agreement with the other partners. Whereas an associate partner brings home a salary, although also an amount of business into the firm. And that is basically when you move from being a principal associate to an associate partner, when you bring in your own clients. The associate partner is not liable for the losses of the firm, whereas the equity partner is. So most firms, like any business, have fixed costs, which the equity partners have to bear in case they don't bring in a certain amount of business. Most firms do, but most firms will bring in that amount of business, and that's why they would make you an equity partner, because they're sure that you'll be able to bring in that particular amount of business. But that is the basic difference, that the equity partner gets to take home profit, the agreement between the others, whereas an associate partner takes home a salary. The difference between a paralegal and an intern, I'm sure most of you know, is that a paralegal is more long-term in a firm, whereas an intern is more short-term. So paralegal will be there for around a year with the firm, whereas an intern generally is there only for a few months, maybe 1 or 3, depending on the firm and the agreement with the firm and the intern. Okay, so we'll then move on to the steps before you start to apply to law firms. There are 3 main steps. One is making your CV. The next is collecting data, and the third is making a cover letter. So in general, this is the same strategy or game plan you should follow while applying for an internship or while applying for a job. So I've used the words internship and job as an alternate to each other in this presentation. So, but basically for your understanding, they should mean the same thing. So the first step while applying to any firm, when you decide whether you want a job with that particular firm, is to visit the firm's website and read about the firm. The reason why this is the first step is because only if you know about the firm can you apply for it. And only if you know what type of practice they do, should you apply for it. My suggestion is not to send CVs to 100 firms without understanding what the firm does exactly, because you must have a particular plan or a career plan when you start off in law school, or 3 or 5 years, whatever course you're doing. You can understand, you can reach that particular goal that you're aiming, that is whether to join a firm or to say become a research associate or join a counsel's chamber. Find out the firm's recruitment and email ID. So something I generally like to do is maintain an Excel sheet when I used to apply to firms, which would have, say, the firm name, the email ID, the phone number, the number of times I've attempted to, say, call or email them, along with the data as to, say, who picks up the phone so that I have some sort of connection with the time I call. I know exactly whom to speak to, and I don't need to, say, okay, give me the hiring department, etc. I know precisely that person's name who I've spoken to before. Always send them a covering letter with your CV. In the future slides, I'll show you exactly what is required in the CV and the covering letter. If you do not hear from them after 1 or 2 weeks, always send them a follow-up email. Don't continuously keep calling up the firm and trying to trouble them, because generally firms are very tight-knit. Although even they may be large, people don't like you, especially because you're not a client of the firm. And always remember, the more firms you apply to, especially in the initial years of law school, the greater the possibility of you getting an internship with a particular firm. Okay, so say you called up a firm or sent them an email and they've asked you to send you a CV. What do you do? So the first question is, do you think there is a difference between a resume and a CV? Would anyone be able to raise the hand and answer?
A CV is more academic in nature and like it has more detail, and a resume is like a summary of a CV.
Right. So a CV is basically everything that you've accomplished in your career, professional and educational life, whereas a resume is something shorter, which is much more direct towards a particular job that you are applying for. So just as an example, many times you might be applying to a firm which only does litigation and you're only interested in litigation, but you have some research experience which is not directly related to the legal profession. You may decide to remove that from your resume, but you will always retain that in your CV. Do you always need to attach a covering letter to your CV? In my opinion, yes, because generally I've seen a lot of people. So I was in the placement cell of KC Law College, as well as before that, when I did my BCom, I did the 3-year law course. Before that, when I did the BCom, I was on the placement cell of Jai Hind. And we always used to ask people to mark us in CC, that's the placement ID, in CC when sending their emails to companies, and match to the email without any sort of description or introduction as to what they're applying for, what they're looking to apply for, who they are, etc. So a covering letter is always necessary so as to introduce yourself, so that the person on the other end who is receiving the email has some idea why they are receiving the email. Okay. What all information you will need to provide, we will see that in the next few slides. So I've also prepared a sample CV, which I can show you all at the end of these few slides. So name and contact information is the most important thing. It generally should be at the center and at the top of the CV. Your name should be in full. There should be a physical mailing address, a phone number or numbers where you can be reached, preferably your private mobile number, so that if they call, you know exactly, you are able to answer the call immediately, because generally they don't call 2-3 times. It's only one call you may get, or a second courtesy call. Also an email address. Create, for people who are just starting out to apply, create a new professional email address. Don't use the same email address you would use in college before. Keep it a short version of your name, like just the first name and the last name, or the first name full stop last name. Or don't keep it something vague, like, just as an example, I've used your baby cool _96. That is something that it does not look professional when you're emailing clients or firms while you're applying. So try not using. Sometimes email IDs aren't available because there are so many reiterations of your people who have the similar name, and in such circumstances, the only thing you can do is use a number at the end. Okay, so this is just a copy of the a sample CV that I made. It's completely made up. So as you can see, I've divided the CV into 5 portions. First, I start with professional experience. This is basically where you have worked. Then is the educational experience, leadership experience, competition experience, which is basically moot courts, etc., and extracurricular activities that you have done. So this CV is based off the understanding of when you would apply for jobs. But in many circumstances, you may not have that much professional experience as someone who's applying for a job. So in that circumstance, you should move the education qualification up. Also, this is keeping in mind that a lot of colleges provide a format to their students while applying through the placement cell. But this is outside that. The reason why I try to follow this format is because I try to stick to 1 page or maximum 2 pages with CVs, because people generally don't have that much time to read. Like, as an example, many law firms would get 100 a month, and they just don't have so much time to read every single one of those applications. So try and keep your CV as short as possible. And that's where the covering letter also comes into play. Now we're on the educational history portion. Start with your highest qualification. So basically, if you've done a bachelor's, keep that on the top, and your 10th standard education on the bottom. The degree must state your expected year or date of graduation, so that people can understand when you are expected to graduate, especially when applying for internships and jobs before you graduate. Many people tend to leave the thing blank, saying pending or proceeding, etc., or going on. But the understanding is that if you're graduating in this next year, you should start like in 2022, you should start technically applying for jobs in this year, so that by the time you graduate in May next year, you are secured with a job at the time, the date of graduation. Make sure to include all your semester marks. Don't try and include an average of them. This is so that the recruiter has more information while looking at your CV. Do not include a failed semester in it. Mention that your results are awaited, because generally if you fail a semester, you give some sort of ATKT or re-exam. So in such a circumstance, mention that your results are awaited. And in many circumstances, even the Mumbai University messes up with the calculations of the marks, where you can ask for Xerox copies, etc. So you should always mention that the results are awaited. Keep your marks as a percentage and not a GPA, because very few in India know about GPA marking. Also, GPA markings vary from university to university. So if you're applying to a firm where someone says from Delhi or Kolkata, they may not understand the GPA marking system completely. And okay, so the professional experience, like I showed you earlier, should be in the form of a timeline, where someone can see your entire story just by one look at it, with the latest work that you've done appearing on the top, and the earliest work that you've done, or the first job that you've done, appearing on the bottom. Mention the city where you studied in or worked in. Be specific as to what work you did. Most of the times when you're applying for a follow-up after an internship, people look at the kind of work you did in the previous internships that you have done, because they want to understand the level of responsibility that old internship gave you, because only if that old internship gave you a lot of responsible work would they understand that what kind of work you are able to do, or what kind of work that you are not able to do. If you achieve something during an internship, such as if the partner recommended, if say a junior partner recommended your name to a senior partner for an extended legalship, you should mention it here. We'll just go back to the to that sample CV to see a few points. So as you see here, I've drafted a plain written statement, questions for cross-examination. Okay, I wrote that in the firm, I was specifically a litigation intern because firms have many departments. So the person would want to know which department in that firm you exactly worked in. And as you can see here, just as how on the right side, so that just by looking at the right column, you can see exactly how much time the person has spent in the firm, in which year, etc. In the next part, we see engaged in legal research of statute and case law, along with shadowing of advocate XYZ, and took part in negotiations between Godrej and Boyce on reliance of acquisition of ABC Pharmacy. Okay, so this is actually something that I want to mention that is not supposed to be done in CVs, which is giving the names of clients. So you can say what the negotiation was, but in general, you should not try and divulge the name of the client's names, especially if the deal or the transaction has not gone through. And here, basically with the IP firm, it's showing what all the person has done for the firm. Leadership experience, if you're on any committee in the college, mention it there. This means that basically why leadership experience is required is because you basically have the ability to do teamwork and you have the diligence to be able to manage a committee in your college. Do not oversell what you do. Basically, many law firms in India want people with leadership experience, but they also don't want people who keep, getting called to college or keep going back to college, because although they allow you to come in late in most internships after your morning college gets done, they don't want someone who will spend more time in college and then not pay attention to the internship as well, because although internships last for 1 month and as such they do not give you much responsibilities at the internship, they still want to make sure that in that 1 month you learn and absorb as much as possible. Because you have to also remember that while working interning in a law firm, you are also basically given evaluated by the people in the firm as to how you would be tomorrow if they absorb you or they employ you in the firm. So that's why you should try and remain as diligent to the work in the firm as much as possible. And if you feel that a certain college commitment is required, then you should try not applying for internships or make it clear from the beginning, or try applying to a small firm or advocate where they don't require your presence all the time. Extracurricular activities include all volunteer work here. If you have any skills that can be useful for a job, such as using of Excel or coding, etc., it should be here. If you won any national sports tournaments, it should be here. Don't try and put in stuff where, say, you've won only just a school competition. And if you say took a certificate course on public speaking, etc., or those, say, the LinkedIn courses or edX courses, etc., it should be here in this section. So we'll just go back to that biggest resume errors. So if you don't have much experience, you should try fitting your CV into one page. Instead of long detailed paragraphs, make it short and crisp and concise. Grammatical errors show poor communication skills and insincerity. So try and if you know you're strong, try and firstly using this app called Grammarly, which helps in correcting English, and also show your CV to your peers or friends in college. And get it, or even teachers, as a matter of fact, to get it evaluated to understand whether the CV is up to the point mark or not. Try not writing in first person, but like as you saw in the sample CV, it wasn't I did so and so. It's just write drafted so and so documents. The purpose of this is to try and eliminate as much unneeded language or grammar as possible, and sort of stick to the point when someone is reading your CV. Try avoiding jargon or slang. And many people tend to also write a sort of objective on the top of their CV. Try being very careful what is stated. Don't try and say it very generic statements. Many times when I was in the placement cell, we would receive a lot of CVs where in say 5 to 10 CVs, the objective stated was exactly the same and it was very generic. In such circumstances, try not putting an objective in case you know specifically what you require, what you want to do, because it doesn't come off well to the person reading the CV. These are some more resume mistakes. Do not list irrelevant hobbies such as music, cooking, reading, and cricket. This is a waste of space. Apart from that, most people have such hobbies, and especially if you've not achieved anything in those hobbies, it just takes up space. Don't mention any achievement or award that you got many years ago, such as in the sixth standard. Make sure that your resume is structured and must include all the information relevant to the job you are applying to. So if you know that in a particular firm where you were not a specific intern and you did litigation work, try placing more emphasis on the litigation work when you are applying for a litigation internship than on the non-litigation work when you are working in that particular firm. So something that a lot of firms do, not most of them, but a few of them, is that they make you prepare an Excel sheet when you're interning there with all the work that you've done in the firm. So try maintaining such a sheet for yourself, irrespective of whether the firm wants you to make one from the start of your sort of legal career, so that you can then, once you're done with that internship, add all that relevant experience to your CV. Emphasize your important achievements and activities as per the job profile. False information. So something that people take very seriously in the legal profession is providing false information. Try not providing false information in your CV at all, because today when you submit your CV, it may be all well and good, but tomorrow when you go for an interview and people cross-question you on the information you have provided, there will be holes in your explanation, and there might be instances where they are able to spot the lie. And in such a case, it just doesn't reflect very well, firstly on you and also the institutions that you represent, such as your college, which you are a part of. Try and not over-exaggerate what you have done, and only emphasize those skills that are truly yours or that you truly understand. So just as an example, if you don't know how to speak a language fluently, such as French, which many people did learn in junior college, try not mentioning that in your CV, because in case the person who's interviewing you knows French well and tries to speak to you in that language and you cannot reply to them properly, it just reflects badly on you. Look at your CV from two perspectives. Firstly, the main person whose perspective you have to look at it from is the person who is recruiting you. Because the CV is not a story that you are telling yourself, it's a story that you are telling someone else. So try putting yourself in their shoes, whoever they may be, and trying to understand whether the CV works in your favor or not. If you were today trying to recruit someone while being, say, a partner of a firm, whether you would recruit a person when your CV comes in front of them, whether you would recruit yourself. Make sure that your CV is attention grabbing by basically trying to make it concise and also making your achievements shine out. Make sure that it is related to that person's practice area where you are applying, because if you use certain terms and keywords which are in relation to where that person is working, they will not only find it easier to read, but they will also connect with your CV more and are more likely to then follow up and call you for an interview. Narrow down the number of interviewees. Basically, the idea behind that is that many times firms get hundreds of CVs and they will only choose 20 to 25 people that they are choosing to, that they are likely to interview and take to, say, the next step. So you must try and make sure that whatever happens, your CV is so well structured and well defined that they are willing to, they narrow you down and not your opposing or your competitor, basically. Because although technically speaking, your peers in college are your friends, they are also competing with you for the limited number of jobs that are there in the firms. Because firms at the big 1 or 2 years in advance know how much they are going to recruit. Starting, say, in May 2022, they know in 2020 how many people they're going to recruit in 2022, looking at their budget and how much they can afford to recruit from the market. They understand how much even students from NLUs they can take, and how many students from regular MU sort of colleges they can take. And trust me, most of the times the scale is in favor of the NLUs rather in favor of the Mumbai University students. especially for large firms, many large firms do hire people from Mumbai University colleges, but the numbers are not that much. They may be 1 or 2 students, and that too from premier or the top universities like GLC or Praveen Gandhi, etc. And then you look at it from your perspective, which is organize your experiences and achievements, research the firm thoroughly and the practice area and job. If you know the partner who say is eventually going to interview you, because many firms are not as large, so it can sort of narrow it down to who is the litigation partner, who is in charge of interns, etc. If you speak to your seniors, they may be able to guide you as to who does that work in the particular firm. You might be able to tailor your CV in a particular way so that certain portions come out, or you can tell a particular story from the CV for that particular person. Build on your qualifications for a job, understand your strengths and weaknesses better, so that you can bring your strengths out in your CV. But knowing your weaknesses is equally important, because you will be cross-questioned and asked such questions in your interviews. Because although certain things are not mentioned in your CV, many times people can read between the lines, basically. The covering letter. So the covering letter does not need to be a long covering letter, which basically gives your entire life story. Basically, the first paragraph needs to just be kind and say, please accept my application for such and such internship. It should mention these 4 prerequisites. That is the time of the internship, as in which month or months or certain period you're looking for the internship. The department in the firm, because many firms are large. The city that you're looking to work in, especially if the firm is there in multiple cities, and the period, especially if it's an internship. Why the time of the internship is necessary is because many times most firms hire in batches, depending on the internship, depending on the semester. So you will have to, if you're looking for an internship, say in the semester starting January 2022, then you will probably have to start applying one semester before. So that means in May or June. Why this is necessary is because many NLU students, especially who aspire to apply to those big firms, start applying at that period, and firms are willing to provide internships to them starting early, because they sort of reach the gun earlier. So you should be trying and applying start pretty early, because as that saying goes, the early bird gets the first worm. So try applying as early as possible for an internship, because that also shows that you have the ability to plan ahead in your life and you know exactly what you want, and you're trying to sort of grab and get it immediately. Coming last minute or applying last minute, say if you're looking for 1 month before, if you're looking for an internship and you start applying 1 month before, is not ideal, because then it seems sort of hurried and as if that firm or place you're applying to was the last option. The second para must have why you want to intern in that particular firm, the practice area you're looking to develop, and the skills you have that may be able to help that particular firm. In case you want to, you can also highlight important aspects of your life that made you decide why you want to apply for that particular practice area or that particular job firm, because that might also help them connect with you better. But in general, the first 2 paragraphs that I've stated here is what is more vital and necessary. I shall just share the sample covering letter with you. So as you can see here, this ideally should just be copy pasted copy email body. Dear sir, madam, this is just a sample. I'm a second-year law student studying at XYZ College of Law. I would like to apply as an associate in the private equity team of the firm ABC Legal in Mumbai. Okay. Also provide a brief introduction as to why you would think you would be best suited for the role, including prior experiences that you have had, and end it with your name. This is just a sample for you. Basically, they've accepted your CV, they've read it, and they call you for the next stage of the process, which is an interview. If few of you all have done a degree before, generally you all may have seen that they do group discussions, but generally group discussions don't happen in law colleges. Very rarely will you see law firms do group discussions, except if the hiring pool and talent pool is very high, but mostly they directly prefer going for an interview. And here are just a few tips for the interview. Wear formal clothes, preferably a suit and a tie, because that is generally considered, a suit is generally considered sort of uniform for most lawyers. And because you cannot wear bands, because you're not in court in front of a judge, a tie is preferable. Try for try dressing as formal as you can for the interview, as you would dress for, just an example, meeting a client, because a law firm is eventually looking for people who dress exactly the way that they want. And most law firms prefer when you wear a suit and a tie for an interview. Know your CV front and the back before the interview, as you'll be asked questions on its contents. More than general legal questions, if you don't know what is in your own CV and what you have written or work you have done, that you have written in your own CV, the less likely you will get selected than random questions in relation to the law, because they expect you to know your CV more than you know the general aspects of the law. Always carry 3 copies of your CV, 2 in case there is a panel of interviewers, and 1 is for you. Because if you carry only 1, you'll give that copy to them. And then if they say, oh, in this 5th line, so and such thing is mentioned, you'd want to just read it once again and see, what you have written to recall what you've written. Be there before time so as to avoid delays, because generally, as you know, in Bombay, whatever happens, people reach late to places, but you don't want that impression to come on during that interview. So whatever happens, try reaching at least 15 minutes early, because then you might reach 5 minutes before the interview, and you also have some time then to calm down and collect your thoughts. Don't shy away from asking precise questions to your interviewer. Many times after the interview is over, the interviewee will ask you, do you have any questions for us? In such circumstances, don't not ask questions if you know what questions you're looking to ask. Where would you see yourself in 5 years working in the firm? Because to understand your own career path and you plan your own career path, you need to know whether that firm is also the right fit for you. Always know what the firm does and what practice areas they feature in. Especially if it is a litigation firm, looking on India Kanun for judgments and orders with that first name is I can suggest doing that, because then you can understand what sort of matters they mainly handle. With non-litigation, many websites report on what deals various firms are working on. Speak about your experiences in such a way that your skills are highlighted to the person taking the interview. Don't speak about them only in terms of what you had done, but what you have learned, because what you have learned is more important for in the perspective of the next job you are applying for, so that they can understand what work and responsibilities they can eventually give you as an intern in the firm. Or tomorrow also, if they're looking to hire you, where they can test your mettle and your skills, so that they can decide if they plan on hiring you in the future. Never reveal information that you feel may be confidential. No client names, and no way can you indicate who you had worked for or what sort of deals you had worked in. The reason for this is because most firms sign confidentiality agreements with their clients. They don't make interns sign those agreements, or they don't show those agreements to interns. But in most circumstances, they are there, and you do not know what or how what you reveal how it would cause damage to the old firm you are working for. And the person who's interviewing you may pick up on certain cues that show that you might not be able to keep that information confidential. So it's better just not to avoid saying anything in relation to any client names. You can, of course, talk about what sort of deal that you did. And in such a case, if that person interviewing you just has more information at hand and is able to identify the clients, of course, he's not going to reveal it to you, but you can explain what work you had done for that old firm, and that is not something that would reveal who your clients were. And the last point is, don't speak ill about your previous bosses, because no one likes someone who talks bad about them, and they would feel that tomorrow, when you stop working for the firm, that you may go to another firm and sort of speak ill about them. So just try and however bad you feel that your previous boss was, don't try and speak bad about them. Here are some of the things that you may not know about just general law. What is a senior advocate? So according to section 16(1) of the Advocates Act, there are two classes of advocates, namely senior advocates and other advocates. So an advocate with a court with the consent of the advocate may designate that advocate, that's the Supreme Court and the High Court, as a senior advocate. This is by virtues of his ability and standing at the bar. Something many people don't know about senior advocates is that that firstly they cannot file their wakalatnama in any court, and they also cannot be briefed to draft a pleading or affidavit or to appear directly by the client in any court. They have to be approached by a firm or by a regular other advocate, and then only can they appear for the firm. So they don't directly appear for clients, they appear for firms. The purpose behind this is so that regular advocates also get opportunities to represent their client, and it's so that certain senior advocates don't try and corner all the clients in that court. So basically, this is something that I had made to basically show a rough sketch as to how a law student can plan their internships, whether they're doing the 5-year course or the 3-year course. The idea behind this is basically that many times students who are in the first few years of law college do not get many opportunities to work in firms because they're frankly too young, and there are already enough people in the last 3 years of the course who are willing to apply for these law firms. As most of you are maybe aware that the legal industry is quite saturated at the moment. There are a lot of new advocates being enrolled, whereas the jobs are not as many. So structuring your life plan, at least for the next 5 years, is something that you all should try to do. What I'm also trying to say is that stick to that structure, but not completely also. Like if you want to move away from it, that is 100% what you should do. Because at the end of the day, if you don't like your job, you will never be able to be a successful lawyer. So in the first few years, what you can do is join as many colleges that you can. You can spend time in the library and find subjects of law that interest you. If something interests you, like say cryptocurrency, there's always an area of law that covers it. And in fact, of late, there are a lot of firms in places like space law or sports law, where although most of their business would not concentrate on that particular area, they still are the firms who are sort of specializing in that area because they are the only firm who are concentrating on that area. You can also learn a foreign language if you're interested in moving abroad to study or work later. Many people are choosing to do their masters in foreign countries, especially in the European Union, where the fees are not that much of an issue. And so you may be studying that foreign language may be able to help you. You can, in the second year, you can join an NGO and work hard in relation to a particular area of law that is better suited to you. There are many NGOs today who are working in specialized fields of law, such as domestic violence, environmental law, etc. You can interview lawyers for newspapers or websites part-time. These are not full-time jobs, but many publications are willing to give responsibilities to young students to interview senior lawyers, also that you can understand the field of law better. In your third year or in your first year of the 3-year law course, that is when you should probably try and apply for your first internship in the office of a lawyer. You can start with a single lawyer, a sole practitioner working in the city civil court or the high court. The reason behind this is to try and build a base and to understand the basics of that area of law. It's very important to build that base because from that base will a larger firm absorb you. In the next year, you can try working for a law firm which is smaller. From what I have noticed in most students is that this year, which is the 4th year or the 2nd year of the 3-year law course, is the most important year because that is the year where basically the firm that they work in, many times eventually that transfers into a pre-placement, pre-law degree completion placement. So that is a very important internship and you should try and apply to a firm where you want to work in the future in that year, especially in the later half or later. The 5th year or the last year is when most people like to concentrate on their studies. So they prefer working with an internship which may be not that taxing on their person, which is basically with a senior advocate or a counsel. You can also work in a firm where you are looking to work for if you didn't get that opportunity to do so before. So an option a lot of other people also take in the last 3 years is to join a solicitor's firm as an article clerk. So a solicitor is another topic that I've actually not covered. Solicitors, basically, I'm not sure if many of you all know about this, but solicitors were a separate kind of lawyer in the past. They had a sort of special status before the Advocates Act was passed, wherein only they could file their wakalatnama in the High Court. And these were when they had the three high courts of Bombay, Kolkata, and Madras. So they were especially given recognition by the Bombay Incorporated Law Society to wakalatnama on the original side of the High Court only. And so that is why they not only were trained more than lawyers because they were doing these sort of articles and their exam is also much more difficult, but they also had a higher status than regular lawyers, because if you had to file any matter in Mumbai city, you could only approach a solicitor so that he could file his wakalatnama in the High Court. So with this, I'm done with my presentation.
What is the difference between working in a litigation team of a law firm and working in the chambers of a counsel?
Okay, so mainly what a counsel does is that a firm briefs a counsel. So a counsel's main specialty is arguing in court. Whereas a firm, although this is not their main specialty, whereas a firm in the matter does all the filing part, the counsel will help with drafting the plaint and they will help arguing the matter and strategizing for the matter in court. So counsel are known for their strategy and their courtcraft, two of those things, because they are supposed to be specialists in court matters, basically. So those are the two differences in terms of what you will learn under both, say, a counsel and a law firm. And why I would also say working under both of them, if you're planning to do litigation, is very important, is because each of their roles in the litigation process are equally important. Why is the law firm important is because without filing the matter, you will not be able to progress with any matter. And doing the preliminary research with the client in terms of what all documents or evidence they have in any particular matter, and is something that the firm does. And then it sort of collates all the information and then it approaches a counsel if it feels that a counsel is required in the matter. Many firms nowadays don't approach counsel for all matters, but they would for a matter where they feel it's a little more complicated than their own in-house team could handle. And so that's why I feel both working with a counsel and a law firm is equally important if you have the opportunity to do so.
Okay, so I get an opportunity, but what would be the average time frame, that I get the knowledge and exposure with both? So is there some time frame that I should work for and then go to the other?
So mostly internships are offered for between 1 to 3 months. So I would suggest going for an internship for a 3 months period of minimum. But many people don't like offering such long internships because they want to get more interns and give more people opportunities. But the longer the internship, I feel at least, the more you learn. So you should try going for internships which are for longer time period. And many people, that's why once they find a firm or place that they want to work in, they become a paralegal in that place, because not only generally does paralegals work for longer, but they also draw in some sort of fee or salary. Although it's not very high, but it still helps when you're a law student in meeting some of your expenses.
I had two small questions. One is that how do you get an internship with a High Court judge? And the second is an issue that I'm facing is I recently joined a solicitor's firm, and it was difficult for me to prepare for my moot competitions along with interning and attending lectures. How do you balance these things? Yeah. How do you manage your time so that you can do all of them and not make the most out of your law school?
Okay. So with regard to the first question as to how do you intern with a high court judge, in most circumstances, uh, judges, if they are willing to take interns, their chamber associates are very friendly with students who just knock on their doors. Of course, during non-sitting hours, don't go and knock on their doors when the court is in progress. But if you just go and drop in, they will provide you with an email ID or some system whereby you can drop in your CV and they'll get back to you if you get selected. Many judges get a lot of internship applications, especially ones who are are well known, such as Justice Kathara or Justice Patel, get a lot of applications. So in those circumstances, getting a callback is difficult. But nonetheless, you should still try and apply through this method. They will give you some sort of email ID or ask you to come in and drop in a CV at a future date, and that's how you can go ahead with that. The second question, well, is a bit more complicated because, to be honest, even as a lawyer tomorrow, you will require to prioritize your time. And personally, I can't tell you whether you should prioritize your solicitor's internship with or your moot court, and that is more of a personal decision. But yeah, so it's difficult to do it, but many people do it. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to more efficient time management, personal time management, because people do both the things. And they, of course, like as a human, we all have 24 hours in the day. So you will have to give something priority over the other. And eventually, if you feel personally that you cannot do it, you might have to even sort of drop one or the other, depending on where they are in your priority range.
Okay, now Petra, the next problem that the freshers these days are facing is that no
Okay.
firms want freshers. They want experienced individuals, individuals with 1 or 2 years of experience. So what do you
Okay.
recommend that how do they approach these firms? Because, they face rejections after rejections.
So in most circumstances, what I would recommend is, firstly, which firms are not willing to take you on. If you're applying to a large firm or medium-sized firm, in most circumstances with zero experience, you will face a rejection. But there are a lot of firms in Bombay, especially, who have, say, one or two partners, or they are individual practitioners who are always looking for people to help them in their practice, especially so as intern, especially people who are capable of doing so. So my suggestion would be first working for such a lawyer who, say, works in the small causes court or city civil court for at least a year, so that they understand what you are able to do. That's not the lawyer, but the firm that you will be eventually applying to. So yeah, that's my suggestion, at least, that you should don't try and aim for the top in the beginning only. You will eventually get there with enough experience.
And are there any degrees or certification courses or diploma courses that give an extra edge? Would you recommend that whether these diploma courses and certification courses give an extra edge? So would you recommend, with the LLB, during the LLB course, one pursues these diploma and certification courses?
In most cases, it doesn't help directly unless you are learning something from it. And also, it depends on how much time of yours it's taking up. So, if you feel that the course content, which is today like they're advertising or they're showing, is for 1 year, if you feel it can be done in 6 months, then maybe it is not exactly worth your time. But also, if you have to understand those topics in depth and you need a model where someone teaches you them to you instead of learning them yourself, then also they may be helpful for you. But I don't think there are very little circumstances in which, say, if you today do a diploma, a firm will hire you only because you've done the diploma. It might add a certain value to you, but the value is more of what you've learned from that course or diploma than the diploma itself. And they will always cross question what you have learned in the diploma and try to figure out how much you absorb, which they can do nonetheless, even without a diploma. They can ask you questions on the topic if what you're applying for.
Can you
Yeah.
highlight the importance and the role of networking, and how does one network? We have LinkedIn, but
Yeah.
yeah, can you share with the participants as raw students, as raw minds, how do they learn to network and the importance of networking?
So essentially, I also don't have much insight into this topic because I'm also quite young. But my understanding of networking is it's just basically goes down to making friends. In general, society works by understanding what there's some sort of barter system where understanding what you can give someone and what you can get from someone else. And that is essentially what networking is. And the purpose is to understand, to get a network is to understand where exactly you can get certain things from by providing something else. So the objective of networking is just, if you bring it down to the base level, making as many friends or getting in touch with as many people as you can, so that the number of opportunities you get to do anything, that is work with a firm or get client references in the future, increases basically. So and this doesn't mean that you need to become best friends with that person, but just keeping in touch with them, getting their contact, say sending them a happy birthday message or a happy Diwali message, something that I think many people do on WhatsApp, is what is termed as networking. But you also have to be able to provide something to them, uh, because you have to be of some use to society, and only then will you be able to network. uh, just by being around doesn't really help. So it's not as simple a topic as people make it out to be, and it can be, networking is actually very difficult and nuanced, and it's obviously not something that I don't think I know it completely, but this is just a brief on what it is.
And lastly, can you shed some light on recruiters, like applying to recruiters? Do you think it makes sense to like use the medium of a recruiter?
Yeah, of course. So recruiters as such, they don't take any fee from you. uh, Basically the only time they earn is once you get the job. They take a certain percentage, like this, you don't have to pay them directly, but they take a certain percentage of the eventual salary that you will get from the firm that you are applying to. Why it is helpful is because in this circumstance, a recruiter does the networking for you and is just a sort of bridge to help you connect with the firm. There's no guarantee that the recruiter will be able to get you a job, but in all circumstances, if the recruiter is experienced, they shall be able to connect you with the right kind of firm where they feel you will be able to eventually get a job. So if they see in your CV that you cannot, say, apply for a Cyril Amachan Mangaldas, just because they have that firm looking for new graduates, it's not necessary that they will make you apply there, because they know that you will not get it, right? Based on their experience. So that's why they are helpful, because they try not wasting your time. They might also be able to direct you towards certain firms which are looking for new candidates, so that you can understand exactly which sort of firms you should be applying to. Because also recruiters are there are different caliber of recruiters also, uh, and not all of them will be approached by all firms. So certain recruiters may be approached by large firms, certain recruiters may be approached by medium-sized firms. So that way you might be need to approach different recruiters as well. But they are
Okay.
they're helpful from what I understand.
So, participants, since there are no questions, we would end today's webinar. So, Petraps, thank you so much. It was a great learning experience, a very engaging hour that we had with you. Thank you so much for transparently and so eagerly sharing your valuable insights with us today.
Thank you.